So I'd like to introduce Sandrine. She's going to be speaking and presenting today. She's an English language teacher with more than 10 years experience and, and she's been teaching English to both English and French learners at the Lycée Général Leclerc in Yaoundé in Cameroon. She's been participating in lots of webinars. She's presented at international conferences, including the Africa ELTA in 2024, the West Africa TESOL Conference in 2022, and other conferences as well. She's a member of several associations like the Cameroon English Language Teacher Association, that's CAMELTA, the British Council English Connects Telegram group, which I hope everyone here is a member of as well, because we're going to have a continuation from this webinar into the Telegram group as well. And she thinks this has contributed to her professional development as an English language teacher. I'm sure it has too. Over to you, Sandrine.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Steve, and welcome everyone to this amazing webinar. As an objective, we will expect participants to be able to come up with a definition of flipped learning, to identify the benefits for both teachers and students, and make a comparison between our traditional teaching and our flipped learning teaching. Also, we'll look at the different challenges, look at some strategies which will be able to overcome these challenges. And at the end, we'll look at a practical takeaway of how we can implement flipped learning in our classroom. As agenda for this webinar, we'll look at the background to flipped learning and traditional versus flipped learning. We'll also look at the benefits of practicing flipped learning in our classroom. We'll look at a practical situation of how flipped learning was implemented. We'll look at the challenges and the successes. We'll conclude, and then there'll be time for Q&A, that's questions and answers. So let's start. What's the background behind flipped learning? As teachers, every time we see the need for us to improve in our teaching as technology also advances, so there is that need to look for innovative ways, helping teachers to move from passive learning towards being active teachers. And because of this worldwide recognition, teaching is moving from being less teacher-centered to learner-centered. And this search for different approaches towards making teaching enjoyable made them discover one of the approaches, which is a flipped classroom or a flipped learning environment. In this case, teachers have tried to see how the needs of the learners are being catered for. And as we move from one generation to another, teaching is becoming much more enjoyable. Now, I'll give time for us to think about this question, and you write your comments in the chat. Now, tell us if any of you have tried flipped learning before. Tell us what you think flipped learning is and how it is being used. So write your comments in the comment section, please. Linda, could you please help read out some comments in the comment section?
Yeah, there's nothing here yet. It usually takes a while, a minute or two, for comments to come through.
Okay.
I've tried flipped learning with my students while we're waiting, and it worked quite well with mine, I think, but obviously there were some problems I think you'll talk about later.
So Linda, to you, what is flipped learning?
To me, it's when you do something before the class rather than after. So instead of giving homework after a class, you give pre-work before a class. We've got a definition here in the chat: when students watch something at home and then come and share their knowledge in class the next day.
I think that's very informative. Thank you.
Another one here, involving technology in the learning process in a non-traditional place like home, which it can be.
Yes, like the picture also stipulates, like you can see in class and outside the classroom, we can find the students working using different technological devices.
I think that's all the comments about this question.
Thank you. Very well appreciated. So we'll look at what others have said with regards to what flipped learning is all about. According to Idnan 2017, Bergam and Sam 2012, they consider a flipped classroom as an educational method where homework and instructions are swapped and they take place beyond the classroom. Shenhen and Marek in 2017 also think that in a flipped classroom, information is transferred to students more when they're out of school, and we use things like videos to disseminate this information. And in the classroom, the students are given an opportunity to engage in practices and activities under the guidance of the teacher. Chung, Weng, and Shen in 2018 also thinks that a flipped classroom makes learners to be much more active, participatory, and encourages a lot of interaction and a very positive learning environment. So in essence, what are we saying? A flipped lesson replaces a teacher's lecture with instructional materials such as videos, where students watch at home and come back to class to interact. They are given an opportunity for them to apply the things which they have learned through different activities like giving them assignments, and the teacher will come back and coach or guide them to ensure that whatever objective they had set at the beginning is achieved. So again, over to you. Let's look at this picture. We have the dark and the light blue picture stipulating two different teaching environments. True, we have the word lecture, which kind of takes us to university milieu, but we are talking about teaching in our classroom as teachers. Which of these teaching scenario describes your classroom? Is it the first or the second? Are you the teacher who teaches and then just gives homework? Or you're the teacher who lets the student work at home and come back and interact in the classroom?
Here we got 4 answers already, and they all say A.
Okay.
1 said B,
Exactly.
and 3 or 4 more said A. So most people are saying A, which of course is the
Exactly.
traditional one.
Exactly. Traditional one is what most of us do. So we want to see the difference between a flipped lesson environment and a traditional lesson environment. In a flipped learning situation, it mostly takes place outside the classroom, like we said, asking learners to go home, watch videos, and come back. Meanwhile, in a traditional teaching environment, everything takes place in the classroom. Hence, making traditional teaching much more passive, so the learners are not given room to engage, to interact. Unlike a flipped learning situation where learners are active, we find them participating, we find them agitating, we find them willing to contribute, to make relevant contributions, hence making the teacher as more of a facilitator in a flipped learning environment. Unlike a traditional learning environment where the teacher is the instructor, the all-knowing, so they consider the students as as an empty vessel where they need to input every material into them. Also, in a flipped learning situation, assessment is usually formative and goes on as lessons progresses, unlike in a traditional teaching environment where assessment is summative. Also, in a flipped learning situation, technology is needed. So there's the high integration of technology in a flipped learning environment. Meanwhile, in a traditional teaching environment, we'll hardly make use of technology. Now, with flipped learning, it requires a lot of planning. So you will not just wake up one day and say you want to apply or you want to make use, turn your classroom environment into a flipped learning. No, it's very difficult. You need to think of what you want to do. You think of your objective, how it's going to help your learner, and if it's realistic. Meanwhile, with the traditional teaching, everything is defined, everything is structured. Okay, it's easy to just move from one place, one topic to another, which is hardly the case with a flipped learning situation. And of course, in terms of cost, we'll incur a lot of cost when it comes to the flipped learning situation, unlike a traditional, since everything is defined and we have every material and resources to be used, usually we'll spend less in a traditional teaching environment. So how can we make use of how can we turn our classroom into a flipped learning situation. Firstly, we need to let our learners know the reason behind why we want to implement this method or this approach to teaching. Because if we do not tell them our objective, they'll get frustrated. Also, let's provide incentive to help them, to prepare them, to make them, and to help them anticipate, want to explore this approach. Let us also make them understand how flipped learning is part of the ongoing teaching process, such that they don't feel that it kind of takes them out of the classroom as initially viewed. So we must make them understand that it's just a continuation or part of our classroom activities. Also, every activity which must be carried out in a flipped learning classroom should be defined and well structured and should be tied to our objective. When we do so, they'll better enjoy this activity or this approach. Let's give them time to carry out their assignments in a flipped learning situation. So with a traditional situation, we will just ask them to do their homework and submit probably the next day. But that is almost impossible to flip learning situation because of the different interference which they could have. So give them time to go through it, give them time to find it, give them time to discover it so that they can enjoy the process. Also, let's always give learners support. The support could come from us, it could come from the community, but either ways, we should provide enough guidance and support for these learners so that they don't feel frustrated at the end of the day. Let's also be able to provide appropriate feedback, especially if we give them a group project, yes, or group work or group project for them to carry out. Let's endeavor to give them feedback which, when applied, will be productive. And of course, since it's a method which needs us to use technological devices, let's try to use that technological application which they are familiar with and which they could easily access. We should not use applications which will be very strenuous for them and also strenuous for us to use. Okay, again, I'll give you the opportunity to tell us what you think of flipped learning. What do you think are the benefits? What do you think are the challenges? And what solutions can you propose? Just write your comments in the comment section. Linda, do you have any idea as to what benefits or challenges could come
Well, I
with?
know when I did it was excellent for the students who did the work beforehand, but for the ones who didn't do it, they just fell behind. And I know there was all these different excuses with like power failure or no time or forgetting. And this was my big frustration, I think.
And were you able to come up with some solutions? How were you able to handle it?
Well, I just had to try and catch them up or try and carry on anyway. I think it's really difficult when not everyone does it because you're relying on that, aren't you, to carry
Exactly.
on with your lesson. What do
Yeah,
you do in that sort of situation?
you're right. Do we have any comments in the chat?
Yes, they're saying about critical thinking. It really helps with critical thinking. It can be very engaging. It can be very flexible. Students have the agency to be responsible, use digital tools. So loads of benefits people are coming up with.
Benefits, yeah,
Lots
exactly.
of challenges as well. Like not everyone can do the homework. Not
Mm.
everyone is able to do it. Resource scarce.
That's right. That's right. Any solutions?
Able to be autonomous. Loads
Okay.
of relevant.
Let's make it easier with this little practice exercise. Could you match ABC to 1 to 6? Tell us which of these is a benefit or is a challenge or is a solution. Do you think 1 is a challenge? Or do you think 2 is a benefit of flip learning? Do you think 4 is a challenge? Linda, any
Somebody's put
response
1
yet?
with B.
Mhm.
Yeah, another person 1 with B.
Okay. It's a matching exercise, so I guess it's going to take some
C
time.
with 4.
Mhm.
1 as a challenge. 2B. 1B.
Okay. It's careful preparation as a
Different
challenge.
answers here. People are putting 1B and 2B. Yeah, so they're both B challenges. Yeah. A6, B1, C5. 4 and 5 are solutions. 2C, 2B, 1B, 3B. Lots of people matching, lots of people interacting, which is great.
Thank you very much, which is really, really great. Thank you so much. Now let's see at the end. Just keep your answers, and then at the end we'll see if they are correct or not. So we'll first of all begin with the benefits. Flip learning gives an opportunity for students to think, to reflect on concepts which has been introduced to them and see better ways to apply them. It can also be a way of revisiting concepts or contents which is a little bit difficult for us to handle in class. Why not even things we feel they have not been added into the program and could be beneficial for learners to develop their English language skills. We could use flip learning as a method or an approach to handle such situations. Also, it assists students with accessibility concerns. Those students who find it difficult to get materials, who find it difficult to use their technological tools to study. Yes, when we apply flip learning, we expose them to this. It also helps them develop their language. It develop English language as English as a second language. So as they watch videos, as they get in face to face with other materials, they get used to the input of English language becomes more reinforced, and this helps them develop their language skills. It's also a means to help them revise content. We have different applications which could be used for assessment, and that is very helpful for these learners. And that is where the flip learning approach comes in. Another benefit is that it's one way to help develop their ability to interact with other classmates and with other people, hence encouraging collaboration. So if there's a group project or if there's a group work which they're supposed to handle online, as they talk to each other, as they interact with each other, as they prepare together, they tend to learn about each other. Also, it helps learners to be more responsible, to know that they can learn on their own, to know that they could discover on their own, to be able to discover abilities or skills which they never imagined they had. It also makes them more engaged. So as they do research, they find out, they come to class, they are more interactive, they are willing to do more. It also moves us, like it helps shifts our priorities. So usually we are more examination-centered teachers. So we always go to teach our learners having exams in mind. Sometimes we forget that the real reason we are teaching these students is to help develop their language skills. So when we are applying flip learning, we discover that we move from that concept to the priority, which is helping these learners develop their language skills. Now, even though we have looked at all these green flyers, there are some red flags. So what are these challenges? Sometimes students are not prepared to embrace this change. They are so comfortable with the teacher doing all the talking and they doing no work. So it's hard for them to adapt. They're not prepared to embrace this new approach. Also, the fact that flip learning requires a lot of effort, requires a lot of resources, requires a lot of time, which we need to make out despite being so busy. For example, if you need to use a video, you need to create out time to do research to get that appropriate video, which ties with what we want our learners to understand. Also, it requires a lot of preparation. We have to try to mix up certain elements in and out of class, consider certain elements in and out of class, to enable our learners to be able to meet their objective. It's also not very visible in certain contexts, of course, especially when we look at that technological aspect of it, the fact that it's technologically demanding, it sometimes may not fit in a context where there are no electricity or no internet connection. Also, the model of teaching or the approach of teaching may not be something which is easily understood by learners. We need a lot of equipment, and the students also need a lot of equipment. They need to get access to it, which may be a little bit challenging. Also, there's a problem of space. We need a lot of space in order to support this activity, especially if we are practicing flip learning in the school milieu, maybe in the computer lab. Yes, you will need a lot of space to move around to ensure that learners are actually doing their collaborative activity. They are collaborating in carrying out this activity. It entails a change in role of students and staff. So you've discovered that teachers definitely no longer act as instructors, but they act more as facilitators. But then there's a way we can go about it to find solutions. So it's not something which is impossible, but something which is doable. What can we do? Like we said, we need a community, we need schools, we need parents to engage. Yes, so if the school can provide technological resources such as tablets, laptops, telephones to enable any technological device to enable us practice this, then it will be good. Likewise, parents. Teachers also can start from bits, okay, easy to difficult. So do not begin with very, very challenging units in the curriculum. We could begin with very easy units so that as they get familiar with this application or with this approach, they also get familiar with they also adapt to the different topics which we are using. Before we get to the most challenging part, they would have been very comfortable using that approach. Also, there are different resources and digital tools available, both online. British Council resources are there, which can enable us, give us the right, they can actually empower us, yes, to be able to teach and carry out flipped learning. We should try to streamline the process. That is, let's not rely only on one activity. Let's use different resources like games, like videos, okay, to create content so that students can be much more engaging. Talk to teachers, talk to other teachers, talk to parents, talk to administrators, tell them about your problem, tell them about the benefits of flipped learning so that anyone who can help address your concern to make this approach easier, they will be able to do so. Let's try different strategies, peer tutoring, individual mini projects, group work. Let's try different strategies to make it very, very easy and enjoyable. So let's go back to our exercise. Again, after this information, what are the benefits, what are the challenges, and what are the possible solutions to flip learning? Linda, I'll start with you. What do you think is a
Yes, so we
challenge?
got answers 1A, 5C, 1B, 3C. Are those all correct? 1B.
Okay.
2B, 1B, 2B, 4A.
I hope you're writing it down because we are going to mark and then we'll see those who are.
C5, 3C.
All right. So let's see if our answers are correct. So 1, students might not be prepared for it. It's a challenge. It needs careful preparation. It's a challenge. Schools could provide access to resources. It's a solution. Revised content is a benefit. Start small is a challenge. And also teaches responsibility is a benefit. Thank you very much for taking part in this quest. So what are the tools which tools can we use to engage our learners, to help our learners practice flipped learning? One of them is the Google Classroom. So at the beginning, we could tell our learners about what Google Classroom is all about. We could also tell them about our objectives, give them instructions on how the Google Classroom is going to help us. We could also use Padlet, okay? Those of us who are familiar, yes, especially when it comes to group work or projects, that will give learners an opportunity to reflect a lot on the content. We can use quizzes, especially during assessments. We can use quizzes to help us in our with our flip learning approach. WhatsApp and Telegram is also a social media platform which we could use in practicing flip learning, especially with the fact that it's the most accessible application used by almost everyone. So like we said, use that application which learners are very, very familiar and comfortable with. There are so many. This is just a few I picked out. So you tell me which other tools you think could be used in practicing flip learning. Again, your answers in the chat box. Linda, you told us you tried using flip learning. Can you tell us which tool you used?
Well, I didn't use any tools at all. I just gave them paperwork to do before the next lesson. So it doesn't have to be with technology. And my students were not very good at using technology and didn't have things at home to use. So I just gave them lists of vocabulary or grammar to research, for example. I did it in a simple way. We've got lots of people putting things in the chat though. Slido, Mizzo,
Okay.
Telegram, Google Classroom, WhatsApp, Telegram are ideal in a low resource context. Lots of ideas here in the chat. Kahoot, debating.
Yes.
Miro, I don't know that one.
Well, I heard of Kahoot. Someone said Kahoot.
So lots of ideas there. Oh. It seems that Sandrine has disappeared. I think she'll come back in a minute. Let's just wait. Please be patient and carry on adding your comments in the chat. Any other things that you've used? Yeah, another idea here, quizzes. That's a great idea. Zoom as well. Yeah, so some people have done work on Zoom for the home part before the lesson. Google Classroom, WhatsApp, quizzes. Lots of great ideas here. Yeah, thank you for adding questions. If you've got any more questions, please put them in the chat and we'll ask Sandrine at the end. Lots of really interesting questions as well. Thank you. Messenger, Vvox, Use Team. Oh, these are new to me, some of these. Vvox.
Yeah, first time seeing it too.
Yeah, you see?
Looks like, yeah, it's like I have a technology savvy crowd here
We do.
today. That's nice.
Excellent. Ed Puzzle. Interesting. I don't know that one either. Great, we can look them up. Messenger, Moodle. Ed Puzzle. I don't know
Apologies everyone for this challenge that
yeah.
we'll yeah, I think that's 100% not voluntary from our part. We'll see. Just finding out what happens, potentially connectivity or power cut, as is might happen in this part of the world.
It looks more like a power cut because she's not coming in immediately, is she? And she's not online at all, I'm afraid. Yeah, please carry on writing your comments in the chat. These are great comments. Lots of people have used lots of different technology to do flipped learning, which is great. And we're all learning from each other.
And I was actually yesterday at the English Connect launch in Senegal with Atasan. There was some actually great presentation from teachers from the association, and then one of the session was actually slightly looking at how integrating technology will be can be made possible with learners in a flipped learning approach. And yeah, one of the things that really came up to mind was some of these teachers have actually, yeah, one of the things is like the mindset shift. It's actually one of the key challenges that came about during the session, because teachers were actually asked how flexible they were towards giving learners the sort of sharing the leadership in the classroom and giving learners the opportunity to co-create content, co-create, the learning with them. And it was actually a great session, and we'll potentially share some of the lesson learned from that session with you as we work towards supporting teachers across SSA, Association of English in Senegal, but also in other countries in the region.
Yeah, I think that session yesterday you were at was about learner autonomy as well, wasn't it? How technology can help. And this is a really difficult thing, isn't it, for people to change this mindset? And
Absolutely.
you think of yourself as a passive student, active teacher, and then we're changing all this to make learners more active. Then teachers have less work to do, but more preparation work.
Yeah, definitely. It seems Sandrine is actually trying to connect now, but she's having challenges with the password for some reason. I'm going to see
I can message it to her.
Yeah, I'm just going to text it to her.
Yeah, good.
Please mute your microphone, please. While we wait. And if you want to contribute now, and you can just raise your hand while we wait for Sandrine to come back. If you'd like to contribute, you can also raise your hand and we can give you the floor. Thank you. Here she go. Yeah, Sandrine is back. Yes, Fauve, can you please, can you quickly contribute before Sandrine takes over?
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity.
You're welcome.
A look at flipped classroom. I find it very interesting. I never knew anything about it before. And this has been very enlightening to me, so much so that I'm determined to practice it.
Awesome. Thanks so much for the contribution.
I really don't teach English language. I teach data processing. But because it's computing, I'll make use of it in my class, even though with the limited resources. But with the ideas I've gotten from this class, I just want to share. I'll just introduce the homework. Already I have data security is the topic that seems very easy for them to contribute. So I'll give it ahead as the homework, give them the objective of the class, and ask those who can to watch YouTube videos. Or I can even research the specific ones I can suggest to them, so that the next class then we will come and discuss about it. I really find it interesting.
Awesome,
and I teach in a public school. The population of each class is about 100, but I'm determined to try it out and see how it works. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks so much. Thanks so much. And Sandrine is back, and she's going to actually continue sharing some of the techniques, resources, strategies that she's using. So Sandrine, over to you. Thanks for making it back.
Thank you, Steve.
Welcome.
All right. So we'll move to the heart of our presentation, which is the implementation of flipped learning. And that was what I used with my 12th grade EFL learners. So after observing the academic calendar or academic curriculum, we realized that there was a lot of work to be done, but the time was so limited. So there were certain key items which I knew could be helpful for them, which was not added because of how much work we had to do. So we needed extra time for follow-up. So I did attend an online training on how to use technology in the classroom. And I remember the flipped learning as an approach. So I thought of which application I could use, and I quickly picked the Google Classroom to implement this. So I asked my learners to write down their phone numbers as well as those of their parents and try to get content from their parents. Also, I educated them on what the Google Classroom is all about and how beneficial it's going to be. So we started off by creating a WhatsApp group where we got daily interactions and feedback. And we agreed that Google Classroom will serve for academic purposes and WhatsApp for daily interaction. And as you can see on the image, that was the terminal billing. That's the class I was working with, and that's the Google Classroom we used. So on that platform, we had live interactions before we met face-to-face. I posted videos, gave them assignments on it, sometimes shared articles, sometimes shared images for them to read and comment on it. Those who had challenges would write and then give feedback before they returned to class. Now, based on what they had learned, it made teaching so easy because the learners became more engaged during lessons. Unfortunately, at the beginning, it was a little bit challenging because not everyone connected. Some of them had challenges like they didn't have the right technological device to use, such as mobile phones, laptops, or tablet. Some of them also complained of internet connection being a problem. But after talking to them, some of them also felt reluctant. They felt like it wasn't useful. So we had an informal conversation, and I still encouraged them. And definitely everybody got connected at the end. Now, the classroom was created, links were shared, and each time I told them that there was an assignment, indicated there was an assignment or something for them to look up on the Google platform, they will quickly rush to it. If it's a video, they will watch and make comments, which I will also receive. Now, what are some of the challenges we face? Sometimes they did not see the assignment on time, either due to power cuts or no network. And also not everyone was engaging at the beginning, like I told you, because of the fact that they maybe did not have a phone or a tablet or a laptop to use. And also there was the challenge of some videos not uploading. So it made the class a little bit, it took us a little bit behind because either I'll need to play the video in class or I'll need to give them more time to work on it. All in all, implementing the flipped learning approach was so enjoyable. And at the end, students testified that it was a very good opportunity for them to get acquainted with different technological ways of learning, different applications which they could use in learning. And it also made them discover that they didn't need to use the applications only for social or recreational activities, but they could also use it for learning. Linda, over to you on takeaway tips.
Okay, so we're trying something new with these bi-monthly regional webinars, and we're going to give you some takeaway tips from each webinar to try out in your class before the follow-up discussion on Friday in the English Connects Telegram group. So we'd like you to relate all this to your own teaching and your own context by trying out something in your class. So here are a few suggestions. And as we said before, it can be with technology, but of course it doesn't have to be, especially where there's an issue with people not having access to technology. Some suggestions here, what you can try out before Friday. You could just give your learners a list of vocabulary to learn. So they do the learning at home before the class, have it in their head when they come, and then they use it in class. That's a simple version of flipped learning. Or you could give them a grammar point, for example, the past continuous. They learn that before the lesson, and then they practice it in class. And this is using the classroom for the communicative practice, and then the boring practice, meaningless practice maybe at home before the lesson. A couple more possibilities. You could give them some topics to research before they give short presentations on the topics in class, and they could research online or asking people, for example. Or, of course, you could send the students a short video to watch before class and then all discuss it in class. So do you think it's possible for everyone to try out something like this in class and then report back on Friday? If you think it's possible, please put yes in the chat. Try it out anyway, and then Sandrine will be in the English Connects Telegram group. Great, lots of people are putting yes in the chat. Excellent, that's what we wanted. Okay, so Sandrine will be there on Friday in the Telegram English Connects group, and she'll talk to you all about your experience. So many people saying yes, that's excellent. Sandrine.
So it means Telegram is going to be very enjoyable next week, Friday. Thank you all for coming. And now it's time for any questions. If you have any questions, we're open to listen.
Yeah, we've got quite a few questions in the chat already. So I'll ask you some of those first. And if there's time, we'll allow people to unmute. One of the first ones, can we use flipped learning with beginners? What do you think, Sandrine?
Yes, I think it's even enjoyable with beginners because we have a lot of elementary videos. And like we said, try not to give them a lot because it could also get so overwhelming. So flipped learning can be applied to any learner at any level. It isn't restrictive as long as they have the right technological tools and they are familiar with it, then you're good to go.
You're right. It's got to be something they can do, because if they can't do it, they won't be able to. They may not have parents to help them at home. So any level of work you give them, it's got to be something that they can do. Another question in the chat before was, what about, we can combine these two, what about learners in rural areas and what about learners in public schools? Can they use flipped learning?
So I understand your worry because we feel flipped learning is limited only to our use of technological devices. So if there are no laptops or computers, we cannot make use of them. But mind you, Linda said she didn't use technology. Flipped learning is anything we ask our students to go back home and do. So we can even use the immediate environment as a means of flipped learning. So if you're going to talk about farming or agriculture or parts of the house, why don't you ask them to go back home and look at their homes or look at the garden next to them and say, talk about and write down the things they saw planted in the garden? That's still flipped learning. So if you have a technological tool, that's fine. If you have access to it, that's fine. But that's not the only method of practicing flipped learning. Remember, flipped learning is any activity which takes place outside the classroom to make learning easier.
And there's a very good question here that somebody put just now. Can I record myself teaching and send this to the learners?
That's a video. If you can do that, then that's good. That's
it, isn't it?
Yes, it's a great
And another
idea.
question here, how can flipped learning be adapted to support students with different learning styles and abilities in an EFL classroom? Interesting question, Elhaj.
Yes, that's a very interesting one. So, like we said, and therefore that what you want to flip should be something which the learners are acquainted with, are familiar with, and is able to meet their needs and their objectives. So if you have learners who are auditory, if you have learners who like to watch, you will need to adapt each of your flip learning lessons or approaches to meet the needs of all of them. So those are the things you consider before picking up the flip learning approach. Hence, we said you don't just wake up from bed saying you want to apply flip learning. It takes a lot of planning and a lot of time. So those are the factors you put into consideration before engaging the flip learning approach. So if you do a lot of planning, then you'll be able to address all the needs of your learners.
Great. Okay, and another one here. This is interesting. How can motivation and praise help pupils grow and explore their potential? I think maybe this question was about students needing motivation and praise in class when they're outside class and they don't get that. How can it work?
Okay, so motivation and praise can actually help learners be more pushful towards this approach. I will give my experience as one. Remember, I did say that at the beginning, most of them were very reluctant to get engaged with the flip learning approach. But when most of them realize that each time I come to class, I make reference to those who commented, those who came up with the assignment, and those who did the assignments, those who even went out of their way to print out, or those who could interact more, and how everyone was excited about it, it pushed them to want to also participate in it. So motivation and praise in class has a great way, goes a long way to encourage these learners even while at home carrying out the flip learning. So while doing that at home, while carrying out an exercise at home, they are conscious of the benefits, how their teacher is going to feel about it, how their classmates are going to feel about it. Even while they are doing their group work, doing collaborative learning on the platform, they also get to see and sense that whatever contribution what they are doing is being appreciated. If a platform is created, for example, we had the WhatsApp platform and even the Google platform, and sometimes we interacted. Yes, you could also praise them based on the responses they give. So motivation and praise will help you if it's done while the activity is going on and even when you have interactions with them in class.
Yeah, there's a question that's been posted twice here, so I must ask this one. Can we generalize that teaching in a class is always passive with summative assessment? I think it means that is teaching in class always passive? Is your teaching passive? And do we always have to have summative assessments? I think that's what you meant. If not, please rephrase the question.
Question, please. If you could rephrase it, I'll appreciate it, so that I'm sure the answer I'm giving is the right answer.
Okay, so please rephrase that and we'll answer that in a minute. Somebody asked about large classes. Is it possible with large classes?
I think that is one of the unnamed challenges I gave. Yes, it could be challenging with large classes, but it is not impossible, because I think with large classes it's even more enjoyable because you're sure that you're going to have, and you at least have some learners participating on the platform. So the challenge will be to start, but then once everyone is engaged, then you're good to go.
Okay. One last one from the chat, and then I think we need to go to Ibrahim, who's had his hand up for a long time. So
Okay.
in a minute. How does flipped learning ensure academic success for exam-oriented pupils?
Okay, remember that flip learning how can I put it? You're not shifting or you're not moving away from your curriculum. It's there to help you be able to achieve your objectives. So I think that with the flipped learning, it's even going to help you more, help prepare the students academically. Why? Because there are some items which you know are beneficial to them, and it's going to help them even for examination purposes, which sometimes may not be stipulated in the scheme. You will use flipped learning to help reinforce them. For example, when it came to teaching essay writing, a class session was very small for us to work on students' writing skills. Flip learning was the approach I had to use to help test them over and over, to prepare them, and at the end, they became effective writers. So flip learning should not be considered as a separate entity from our teaching learning milieu or teaching learning environment. Rather, we should see it as a means to help improve or help build, help add up those things that could make them succeed or pass academically.
Okay, thank you. Please don't worry if your question hasn't been answered. Sandrine will carry on answering these in the Telegram group on Friday. Let's have a couple of questions from the people with hands up. Ibrahim, would you like to unmute and ask your question? You've been very patient. Can you unmute?
Yeah, you unmute, Ibrahim. Thank you. You are still muted, Ibrahim. Could you please press the mic icon? Normally, if you press the mic icon, you should be unmuted. Can you hear us, Ibrahim?
While we're waiting, maybe. Oh, yes.
Yes, good evening. Good evening. Good evening. I can hear you. The network is a bit faulty here.
Sorry about that. Please go ahead.
Please, I want to. Hello.
Yes, we
Yes.
can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, my question is about the large group of students we are handling, like 50 and above. Is it possible that we group? Is it possible that we group the students into 3 groups, then divide the topic into different for the different groups, and we come up together with different answers? Maybe each group will be having one answer, then we use it all. Is it possible that way? Thank you.
I think that's another way of doing it, especially because we have the issue of the challenge of large classrooms. So you could put them in groups, ask them to carry out different tasks per group, and even when they return, we can do peer assessment. They share it with different groups, and then they're able to evaluate, assess themselves. That's still an approach, and it's a wonderful initiative, I think.
Great. Let's go to a couple more questions. Johnson, would you like to unmute and ask your question? Johnson, you unmuted and then you went back to mute. Can you unmute again?
Okay. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes. Great.
Okay. My question is, isn't this an approach to teaching rather than target flip learning? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah.
Could you please rephrase your question?
I said, isn't this an approach to teaching rather than flip learning? Is this not an approach to teaching?
Yes, it is. It is an approach, isn't it? Flipped learning is an approach. Yes.
Thank you very much.
And I think it was mentioned at the beginning that one of the approach researchers have able to come up with to make teaching much more passive than much more active than passive.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I think we've got time for Philip's question. Philip, would you like to unmute now? Philip, can you hear? Can you unmute? Philip, one last chance. Are you able to unmute your microphone? You have your hand up? No. Okay, let's go to Jose. Jose Capango, would you like to ask your question?
Thank you so much for pronouncing my name correctly. Yes, actually, what is being spoken about over here? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Absolutely.
All right. So this is Jose Capango from Angola. I'm happy. I'm really glad it's talked about flipped learning because it has to do with somehow it has to do with my term paper presentation, which has to do with TTT, teacher talking time. And I asked some couple of questions in a group chat, like if flipped learning isn't another approach to actually handle the teacher talking time, because I can see that in flipped learning, we give more priority to students rather than the teacher itself. So it's really good because I can see that everything that is being spoken over here really has to do with my term paper, my presentation at university, and I'm really happy I was here to attend the meeting. Thank you.
You're welcome, Jose.
A quick answer, Sandrine, before we need to finish.
Okay, so I didn't even hear that question, but
The question was, can flipped learning help reduce teacher talking time because it's giving more time to the students?
Exactly, because when we're looking at the difference between flipped learning and traditional teaching, we said, well, flipped learning, the teacher is more of a guide and a facilitator. So it helps the teacher talk less, while the students do more, you engage them more, yes, and they become more interactive, hence reducing teacher talking time.
Yeah, that was a great point to finish on. Great. Okay, so we need to finish now. I'd like to thank Sandrine very much for a really informative, interesting, practical webinar. Please use those takeaway tips to start teaching flipped learning and then try it out if you haven't tried it before. Come to the discussion on Friday in Telegram and discuss. Thank you, Sandrine. Over to Steve to close.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Sandrine, for the session. I think there's plenty to take away today, and I'm looking forward to meeting everyone on Friday next week for the follow-up session. So thanks so much. Have a nice weekend, everyone. Thanks, Linda, for the great hosting as well. So I see you all next week. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Yes, bye.
Bye-bye.
Can you hear me?
Bye, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Everyone.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye.